The summer sun hung low over the quiet little town when Emma wandered into her grandfather's old garage, a place she hadn't dared step inside since he passed away. Dust floated lazily in the beams of light that slipped through the wooden slats, and the air carried the faint scent of oil and rust. She pushed aside a stack of forgotten boxes and froze. There, tucked beneath a weathered tarp, was something that stirred both curiosity and wonder. With trembling hands, she pulled the cover back, revealing the faded curves of a once glorious Pontiac GTO. Its paint had dulled, its chrome had lost its shine, but even in its state of ruin, the car radiated history, pride, and something far greater than metal and wheels. Emma's heart raced. She had heard her grandfather's stories about the GTO when she was younger. Tales of freedom, of speed, of dreams that roared louder than any obstacle. But seeing it here, hidden and forgotten, was like stepping into a piece of his soul. On a dusty workbench beside the car, she noticed a battered leather notebook. She flipped it open, and her breath caught. Inside were sketches of engine parts, handwritten notes about repairs, and, tucked between the pages, little letters filled with tender words her grandfather had once written to her grandmother. Emma traced the ink with her fingers, feeling as if her grandfather were guiding her from beyond. In that moment, she felt something awaken inside her. A spark of determination, a whisper that this car was more than an old machine. It was a secret waiting to be uncovered, a story still unfinished. She didn't know exactly why, but she knew she had to bring it back to life. No matter how impossible it seemed, Emma's decision to restore the GTO was met with disbelief from almost everyone she told. Some neighbors chuckled kindly, suggesting it was far too big a project for a 17-year-old girl. Others weren't so gentle, muttering that she should leave engines to the men who knew what they were doing. But Emma refused to let their doubts shake her resolve. Every afternoon after school, and every weekend from sunrise to dusk, she returned to the garage, rolling up her sleeves and diving into the work. The first days were the hardest. Rusted bolts clung stubbornly to their places, oil stains spread across her clothes, and there were nights when her hands ached from trying to force pieces apart. She watched countless tutorials, borrowed manuals from the library, and sometimes sat for hours staring at the engine, wondering if she had taken on more than she could handle. There were moments of quiet frustration when tears threatened to spill, but each time she remembered her grandfather's smile, she pushed through. Slowly, progress began to show. She cleaned the carburetor, sanded away layers of rust, and learned the intricate rhythm of gears and pistons. With every small victory, her confidence grew. Though her knuckles were scraped and her fingernails forever blackened with grease, she began to feel a strange connection with the car, as if it were responding to her care. The GTO wasn't just a machine anymore. It was a bridge between her and her grandfather's memory, a way to honor the love and sacrifice he had poured into his life. What others dismissed as impossible, Emma saw as a promise she had to keep. And with each turn of the wrench, she knew she was not just restoring a car, but igniting something much greater inside herself. One late evening, as Emma worked beneath the hood, she noticed something unusual about a section of the firewall near the engine. The metal seemed uneven, almost as if it had been deliberately modified. Curiosity tugged at her, and with a screwdriver and steady hands, she carefully pried it open. To her astonishment, a small compartment revealed itself, hidden for decades. Inside, wrapped in an oil-stained cloth, she found a bundle of old photographs and a sealed envelope with her grandfather's handwriting on it. Her heart pounded as she unfolded the letter, the words trembling in her hands as much as her fingers did. The letter told a story Emma had never heard. Years ago, when the town's factory, the main source of work and stability for countless families, was on the verge of closing, her grandfather made a decision that changed everything. He had offered up his beloved GTO engine as collateral to save the business, knowing it meant sacrificing his most prized possession. No one had known, not even his closest friends. He carried the burden silently, never speaking of the sacrifice, choosing instead to let the town thrive without recognition or thanks. The photographs told the rest of the story. Workers standing proudly outside the factory, children in school uniforms, families smiling in front of their homes. All of them had unknowingly lived better lives because of his selflessness. Emma felt tears welling up, not only from pride but from the weight of the secret he had carried. The car she was restoring was more than just a piece of history. It was a symbol of her grandfather's quiet heroism. In that hidden compartment, Emma didn't just discover a secret. She uncovered the soul of her family and the heart of her entire town. The night Emma finally turned the key in the ignition, the garage was filled with a nervous hush. Neighbors who had once doubted her gathered outside, drawn by curiosity and the strange sense that something important was about to happen. Her hands shook as she gripped the wheel, the letter from her grandfather tucked safely in her pocket like a guiding presence. She whispered a quiet prayer, then twisted the key. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a deep rumble that grew into a roaring thunder, the GTO's engine came alive, shaking the air and rattling the walls. The sound was raw, powerful, and triumphant, as though her grandfather himself had risen to stand beside her. Gasps erupted from the crowd. People rushed closer, eyes wide with awe, some with tears already glistening. Emma stepped out of the car and held up the old letter, her voice steady as she read her grandfather's words aloud. Every sentence echoed across the quiet night, carrying the weight of the sacrifice he had made in silence. For the first time, the townspeople learned the truth, that their community's survival had been built on one man's selflessness and love. A silence fell after her reading, not out of emptiness but from the heaviness of gratitude. Neighbors who had once doubted Emma now looked at her with respect, admiration, and even shame for having underestimated her. The GTO's roar became more than just the sound of an engine. It became the voice of a legacy reborn, a reminder that kindness and sacrifice never truly fade. As the headlights lit up the night, the car no longer felt like an old machine but a living testament to the bond between generations and the enduring strength of compassion in the weeks that followed. The story of the GTO and Emma's discovery spread through every corner of town. People who had once hurried past her garage now stopped to offer a smile, a word of encouragement, or even a helping hand. The car, once forgotten and covered in dust, now sat proudly polished in the town square during gatherings, gleaming under the sunlight like a monument to resilience and sacrifice. At its side stood a plaque, not only honoring her grandfather's name, but also celebrating the spirit of generosity that had held the town together when it needed it most. Emma, once just a quiet girl working alone in a creaky garage, found herself at the heart of a community transformed. She spoke with children who were inspired by her determination, and with older townsfolk who confessed how deeply they regretted not recognizing her grandfather's silent sacrifice sooner. Yet Emma never sought glory. She only smiled and reminded them that her grandfather's true gift had always been the people themselves. Their jobs, their families, their futures. The GTO became more than a restored car. It became a beacon, a symbol of hope and unity, reminding everyone that greatness is not in grand gestures, but in selfless choices made quietly, out of love. Emma often drove it down the same roads her grandfather once did, feeling as though he was riding beside her, proud and smiling. And as the engine's steady hum echoed through the streets, the town carried forward not just the memory of one man's sacrifice, but the living proof of what kindness, courage, and determination could create. For Emma, and for everyone who heard her story, the message was clear. True legacy is written not in what we keep, but in what we give away.